Hello, scholars. As you prepare for your first exam, I thought it would be a good idea to share a quick public service announcement about academic integrity and why it's so important to me. Academic integrity has always been very important to me, but it's especially important to me after this one very personal incident happened. You may have read about it in the syllabus, but if not, I will share it here as well. So, as my wife and I were in the hospital to have our first baby, um, it was a magical, beautiful experience, as you might imagine. And I started to hear behind me the midwife talk about how my wife wouldn't stop bleeding. And it made me nervous, but I trusted them and know that we were in good hands. But I kept on hearing bigger and bigger numbers until I heard that 2 liters of blood was lost. And at that point, they told me that I had to take the baby and step away, and they needed to treat her. And I'm sitting there terrified, holding my baby, who doesn't understand at all what's happening. I barely understand what's happening. All I know is that they start to call for a blood transfusion, and they keep calling out her blood pressure, which is getting lower and lower and lower until it got down to 50/30. And they told me that a little piece of the placenta had remained in the uterus, which allowed the blood to keep flowing into the uterus, but there was no baby that was accepting the blood anymore, so it would just flow out. And so my wife needed 2 blood transfusions, while several doctors were in the room pulling out what remained of her placenta so that it wasn't constantly bleeding anymore. And it got so bad that I thought I was going to be a single father. And you can hardly imagine a more terrifying thought, right? Um, in that moment, all I needed in the world was for them to be the doctors and the nurses, to be the most professional, most knowledgeable people in the world so they could save the most important person in my life. And eventually they did. They saved her life. And 100 years ago, I would be a single dad. And it really got me thinking about healthcare and the healthcare profession and the training that we put into it. And I started to think, what if any of those people in the room cheated in their classes, cheated on their MCAT, cheated in medical school, cheated when they were being tested on how to do a certain procedure, right? I needed them to be experts. My wife's life depended on it. And so while I was always very concerned about academic integrity, I am now super, super concerned about academic integrity, and that the degree that you all get, because many of you are heading into a medical field, the degree that you all get actually means that you know what you say you know. So all of this is to say that I take cheating very seriously. And if I see solutions that just don't add up, that involve variables that you didn't learn in class, or that weren't on your equation sheet, I'm going to check in. I'm going to look into it, right? I search the internet for every one of the problems to make sure that they're not on StudyPool or Chegg or any of the other online stuff. I do AI checks. Again, something I take very seriously. And I always tell this to the classes, and yet every single time I find someone who cheats, they end up confessing to it, and they're horrified and sad, and they're in tears, and they're afraid that their future now can't happen, and their dreams are falling apart because they made this bad choice. And it breaks my heart. Every time it breaks my heart. And it doesn't have to be that way, because you could just not cheat. Because cheating gives you a 0 on an exam, which is much worse than any grade that you would have ever gotten if you just did it free and fairly. So I hope this scares you enough to reconsider if there is any thought that you might cheat on any of my exams or any of my homeworks or any of my lab. Um, so do the right thing, make good choices, and feel good about yourself afterwards. All right? I'm rooting for all of you. Good luck.